This is The Bottom Line with Boney Mua.
He is an expert in conflict resolution and peace building. In the build-up to the October 12, 2025 presidential elections, his services are increasingly being requested by the civil society, political parties, and so on. We sat him down on a one-on-one to talk about hate speech, which is an important component in the present campaign. We have his take. Dr. Desmond Ngala, you're welcome to The Bottom Line with me, Boney Mua.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine to be here.
How would you define hate speech in the context of political discourse? And how does that definition differ from incitement to violence or harassment?
Generally, hate speech is globally defined, so which means that it does not take into consideration context, language differences, country-specific, but also levels of education. But politically, hate speech can be defined as any form of communication that seeks to denigrate, refuse political participation, freedom of expression, and freedom of speech to one another based on their views. Remember that the fundamental definition of hate speech rests on what we will call the characteristics or the background of an individual. So people with ideologies that differ from one another, who are segregated upon, who are removed from the discourse, people who have not only particular political ideology, who belong to schools of thoughts that we would not want to embrace them, and we would treat them and consider them as people not being within our own circles, would be considered in a political sphere as hateful content. I could go further to tell you that hate speech in this sense now will not only be what is said, but it could be in forms of actions, which means the hateful acts that will transmit into communication, and then we can also qualify it as speech.
How does that differ from harassment and incitement to violence?
There is a thin line between incitement to violence and hate speech, in that when you hate somebody, when you hate something, the tendency that you turn to cause another person to hate is very high. And that's why you can have an opinion, a political opinion, a social opinion about something. But the moment in which you want to cause the next person to have the same feeling like you becomes hateful. Now, what's incitement to violence? Incitement to violence, like the term would say, is the capacity of an individual, of an ideology, of a principle to cause another principle, an individual, or another subject to do what? Take acts of violence, which if he were to be left on his own, he wouldn't be able to do this. And I could give you more examples within the context of incitements to say, for you to incite, you must be convincing enough for someone to say this. But incitement also rests on cliches, community cliches, and already existing tools that are exploited by what I will call conflict entrepreneurs to push a narrative that people can act before even thinking.
So what are the global trends of hate speech, especially around election period? Are we seeing an increase of hate speech in this pattern, or they have really shifted online?
I would say we have two major trends as far as elections are concerned with hate speech. One, the online trends, and then we have the second one, which is a mix or an oscillation between what is happening on the ground, but also what goes beyond the ground to the mainstream media. And let me start from the online perspective. That's what we get up every morning to. We are seeing people who are using ethnic and ethno-regional dynamics to actually push a hateful discourse online, politically. And when it say
Intentionally.
This is very intentional, because I would want to give benefit of doubt to some people, but I tell you very clearly that this is also very intentional. But on the other hand, we have long existing principles and cliches. But you would agree with me that you've grown up 30 years of your life, and you're told that when they say les anglophones, when they say the francophones, when they say chabro pot, when they say kamnogo, these are derogatory terminologies. And you would be saying, oh, but for 30 years in my life, I have known this word that nobody considered them as hate speech. So We have an online dynamics, which is it's actually continuing. But again, we have an offline perspective that is also not only being consumed offline, but also being consumed on the main media. But yes, we have, you heard of this term, which is the preliminaries, I would say, of hate speech politically. But in Cameroon, we have le candidat du Nordiste, le candidat du Nord. This is the candidate of the Anglophones. This is the candidate of the Bulu people. This is the candidate of, because they want to tag the political philosophy to an ethnic group, and to say if you're not within this ethnic group, you don't implicitly or explicitly belong to this kind of political.
So people who actually relay those type of messages, don't you think that their educational level is maybe below average?
I think that education and hate speech or people who propagate hate speech, I would say it's some sort of a dichotomy. We have seen in this country, and we have people on tape who've gone to the media, sat very clearly and defined words that they say, no, I didn't know this was hateful, but these are professors. So it depends on what we will call education, because the people who hold PhDs, who are professors, who when we look at what they're doing, socially, politically, culturally, we would say they are not educated at all from different perspectives. But yes, I tell you also that there are individuals who feel like, because I don't know this, I would say it. And when I say it, people laugh. If I cause Boney to laugh and we're having a cup of coffee somewhere, we're walking the streets and I make derogatory comments on a political party or political ideology, what will intend to happen, it will be that I don't know what I'm saying. But I always want to forgive these persons, that those who are educated, we're talking about those who are not only academically educated, but they are culturally sensitive, they are politically sensitive, and know for sure that what I'm saying is going to hurt one another very, very directly.
In your view, in your own perspective, what are the main vectors of hate speech? Online, radio, town hall meetings, or community radio stations?
Thank you, Boney. I think that personally, the main vectors, the channels, the ingredients, the foundation of hate speech, that goes beyond just the foundations to say these are the main things that could cause hate speech in a place, will be questions of governance. And like I say in many of my outings, I believe that we have only two tribes, we have only two races in the world. Just to say so in a very philosophical way, we have only the haves and the have-nots. And because somebody has and somebody does not have, there is bound to be tension between these two groups of persons. And when there is tension, there is hate speech. Because I will be thinking that I don't have something because Boney has it. And I'm going to look at those characteristics that Boney has to attack Boney based on these characteristics. And Boney does not have something and I have it, and this will be it. So the equitable distribution of wealth across people, communities around the world, has been one of the vectors of hate speech. This could go between economic distribution to even political distribution. But yes, we've seen communication channels. In the 70s, in the 80s, when we had, and even in the 90s, when we had the famous terminology, ennemi dans la maison, it took 2 to 5 years for people in remote communities to hear and know that someone referred to somebody as ennemi dans la maison within the political context of Cameroon. People were called those names within the Cameroon political space, and that's what we are here to dissect. And I will tell you that in those days, it took longer for us to understand. But today, before you say it is instantaneous, people hear and listen to these things almost on a daily basis, when on an hourly basis. The third thing we would see as far as a vector to this will be our socialization. Children grow up knowing that there is a Hausa quarter, there is a Bamileke quarter in town. And you go to each city and you see, just like what we have the Chinatowns around the world, move around Cameroon. Nobody understands this. It's because people want to preserve their identity, but this identity is not well managed to the point where people say, because you are part of this group, it means you are this or you are that. Yes, we've talked about radio, television, but I think that also very importantly, one of the promoters of hate speech has been politics. And maybe we go down to politics to say this very clearly, that politicians, those of you who have the mandate to represent people, to represent ideas of young, the old, of women and men, the vulnerable out there, are exploiting their vulnerability, in that you want votes from community A and you pick them against community B. You go into a community in which you feel like, because your main rival is from community A, you're going to actually push the community to hate them because of what? Of politics.
Doc, this is a very important question. I want you to be straightforward about it. Are there particular groups or demographics that are more vulnerable to hate speech during election cycles, especially, let's say, ethnic minorities, religious groups, gender, for example?
Definitely. In elections, these are all variables we should take into account. And in Cameroon, let's face facts. In fact, this discourse is meant to build a nation, to give us arms in which we can and look at it. And you bear with me that in Cameroon, when you look at groups which are not maybe, let's say, quote unquote minorities, you look at the Mbororos, you look at the Pygmies, you look at groups such as in the Western Highlands, you have the Bamilikes. You go to the far north, you have the Kirbis, you have the Mafas, you go into the Mundans and the rest. You go into the Sawas and the rest. You will understand that whenever there is a political figure from one of the groups, the rest of the groups tend to attack. And we had this question being raised up by Achille Mbembe. Is there a problem of the Bamileke people in this country? And on videos like this, on interviews like this, we should address this. And we think, yes, there has been a perceived and and I would say it, real hate actions towards persons. You move into communities and you hear the children clap, Bamileke, Bamileke, l'agent va vous tuer. In communities with young children as young as 5. And if you tell me there is no problem,
is that instrumentalization of these young children?
This is instrumentalized. This is not only instrumentalized, they're learning from someone. They're coming from homes where they're getting this. The second dynamics to this will be, we have a dichotomy in Cameroon where we always say the Bulus, the Bamilikis, and the Anglophones.
Yes.
The Anglophone, it should be made very clear, it's not a tribe. This is an ethno-national group, just like the Francophone. And this dichotomy between Anglophone and Francophones, politically, we have hate speech around it. We have already seen that candidates have been jeered at. We saw candidates even as close as Yaoundé and Douala, who've been referred to and told to go back to regions where they come from to campaign. Whereas our laws are very clear that you have the right to campaign anywhere. You have to go to.
Yes, is it right to say during the early 90s, this hate speech was at its height, but since then it has maybe come down a bit? Can you agree with that?
I would rather say it in the early 90s, we cannot ascertain the rate of hate speech because communications channels were not as viable as we have now. I tell you, in 1992, when we had this, for you to actually pronounce and identify yourself as an Anglophone was not a very good thing, because they would consider you, they would immediately link you up to the opposition leader who was an Nigerian Fundi. And the Anglophones even earned a name, even before the 90s, as being a gauche. Just because of the way
some people still hold that
stigma that goes with them. I will say it existed in the 90s. The demography was less. The communications channels were less. Freedom of speech and expression was not as we have it today. But today, because of the comfort of the keyboard, because we have instantaneous messaging apps, but because also the demography,
cyberspace, for example,
it's wonderful and it pushes people to the wall.
Yes. How does hate speech influence voter behavior, civic trust, or intergroup relations during elections?
One of the main things that hate speech does to us as a people is that it goes beyond just hurting you to reducing trust, and I would say trust into institutions and democratic processes. Have you not heard when you move around the streets to say it's an an Anglophone thing, it's a Francophone thing, it's a Bamileke thing, it's a Bulu thing,
It's a northern.
it's a northerner thing. If you've heard this, it means that trust within institutions is being reduced to a certain level. So what hate speech does is that it erodes the foundation and the social bond, one nation-state social bond that we should have with one another. In that, at times you're dealing with someone from a different ethnic group, from a different social background, and there is quote and unquote this perceived sort of the French people will call it méfiance. You're very careful and saying that we don't know where this will end us into. So I want to be careful when we're dealing with this. But secondly, it gives us the idea that we're not a nation. Whether you're from the north to south, you're from the east to west, as long as you're Cameroonian, we should come together while respecting our identities as persons. While respecting whether I am male or female, which are the different genders we have in Cameroon. One of the things that hate speech does to us is the moment in which it sets in, you start being very careful with who you see beside. You greet somebody and you're saying, oh, you're from where? From this name, you're from this place.
Exactly.
And people from this place. We saw this. And when we did interviews in Samalima, when we had cases between two families, two individuals, business persons, which went sour, people were like, I will be very careful if I'm doing a business with someone who is from the Bamun land. We have this is a clear example in which we have in Yaoundé, we had journalists go on media to say very clearly that we know where they are found. Go to Obili and Biamasi, and you get the Anglophones there. Those are the same persons who are promoting the violence in the northwest and the southwest. Nothing was done to them, but we are not here to actually judge the institutions, but we are saying that these are clear examples that people sit and look at each other, and there is fear simply because of
that mistrust.
There is mutual mistrust in people.
Yes, what role does the media play? I mean, the mainstream media like radio and television, and then now the digital media in amplifying or mitigating hate speech in the election context?
Thank you. I think part of my research has also been on media.
Yeah.
Looking at media, not only as a vector, but as a contributor, but also not just looking at it from a negative perspective.
Is it the traditional media or the online media we're talking about?
Both. New forms of media, which is the online media. But let's start with the traditional media. The traditional media has a symbiotic relationship with the online media or the new forms of media, be them websites, social media, and you name it. In that we have stories that start on the traditional media that end up on the social media. And we have stories that start on the social media that end up on the traditional media. And the media helps to amplify. I will tell you that what was said in Bafang 1.5 weeks to the start of campaigns with Mami Yanga, with Senator Pwene Francois, would not have gone that viral if we were waiting for traditional media. But it left from there, and she didn't do a live on social media to clear the air. She actually did an offline, I would say, traditional media kind of a statement.
Equinox and some other radio stations
to come and say, look, this is what I meant by this. So you'd see this. So
and did that douse the flames of mistrust that she actually put on play?
I think that I like I've said in different interviews and on record in different places, I think that we should face facts. The best thing that you, as a representative of the people, should do in such a case should be to say, I'm sorry. If we go back to those tips, Yanga's restitutions are that she was actually just restituting what was said in a meeting in Bafang. In a small cell meeting in Bafang. That is what she said. Beyond that, we've not had anything. Maybe tapes were cut off, but we have the integral part. What did you say when people said they're going to send out non-indigenous from Bafang if they don't vote for Biya? You said nothing. You're sitting there. You know what this can cause to the country. Burn us down. You said nothing and you come. So for me, we need to go beyond this. So the media has the multiplier effect rule. That is generally be it new forms of media on the rest. But the second thing the media does, which is a very good thing, and I can still use it with the case of Mami Nyanga, or we can still go down to Tombel and use it there. We saw a senator also saying that they don't want to see any other political party campaign in Tamil. It's on record. It's on tape. What I would say is that the media has exposed what people used to say in private, in hidden rooms. You and me, we sit here and say things and nobody knows them. But the media has come to amplify this and give us, the public, the mandate to know. But thirdly, the media is not on the bad. We've seen on new forms of media, we've seen even on mainstream media, we've seen the National Communications Council even come out with slots on radio, on television. We have news bar events which are telling you hate speech is not good. Hateful content should actually be bad. During political campaigns and debates, we should do it. So I don't see the media as completely evil in this perspective, but I see the media as being used and at the crossroad of trying to make fame, make money, get followership from content that is hateful at some point.
Yes, can you share specific case studies, perhaps from recent elections, where hate speech escalated into violence or significantly affected public opinion?
Let me start in the African scene, then I come back to the Cameroonian scene.
Good.
If we go back to the 2008 elections in Kenya, we will understand what happened between different ethnic groups, because for the political parties, Raila is from a different political party, and we are having us opening from a different political party. If we come down to look at what happened in South Africa as far back as the 90s, if we look at what happened in Rwanda, if we even leave these countries and come into our own country and go back to the 2013, go as close as Makenene, not far off from the political seat of Cameroon, where people are being told that you cannot be a mayor in this place because you are not from here. Even if you are born and you lived here all your life, you cannot be a mayor in this particular community. We've seen persons who've been asked to go back to their place of birth or origin. Not only politically, but even socially and economically. We had on tape someone saying, "Rentrez chez vous." And I ask my question, where is our home? Because Cameroon is home to me. In fact, if I'm settled in Man or I'm somewhere around there in the north, I call it home. I am Cameroonian, so I should be able to live in these places in as much as my own identity.
Are the authorities doing enough to actually make people understand that home is about the country and not a village or a specific place?
I think that this is a very rhetorical question. Rhetorical. I don't work for the government. I don't speak for the government. But we've heard political speeches by the president, now candidate Paul Biya. We're recording this in the eve of elections, saying that every Cameroonian should feel free wherever he or she is. But
in reality,
what do we feel? Yes, we are having lots of Cameroonians from everywhere in the country, possessing land and places, setting up businesses, investing money and doing things. But are we just investing because we're investing, or there is a real sense of belonging to stay in these places? But let me challenge you that in every discourse I hold, I always look at the good side of it. Right? If you go to the West region, we've had the West region as one of those regions where the number of mayors that are not, I would say, indigenous, who are born and bred there, has been very high.
You have examples that you can give there?
We had the mother of, or the first lady of the Hasso recipients, who was a mayor in a community in the West region. We've even had councillors there who are people who have naturalized in Cameroon to become there. If you come to Yaoundé 6, do you know the number of persons who are non-indigenous? Go to Yaoundé 2.
And they're holding political offices.
We have Honorable Jongwe, who is a member of parliament from Yaoundé 2, but originally he's from the West region.
And he's been there for a long time.
He's been there for a long time. He has accepted, and he's been seen like anywhere in Cameroon is my home. This is where I come from, and I live from here. Go even to other communities, into the Lamidates of Garwa, those of Ngaoundere and Marwa. You would see non-indigenous who are not only Lawans, but the notables that are respected in these communities. Yes, these are good practices.
How do we now promote things like that? How do not the civil society, the government, I mean, each and every one of us promote that type of culture?
There is a commission in Cameroon it has one of its mandates as multiculturalism, living together. The National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism, which I've had interesting times working with them, actually questioning and challenging some of their actions, but also giving my own fair share to what they're doing. One of the things we can do is that Cameroonians learn to understand and know Cameroon. When I tell you, people are paying flights from Cameroon to Dubai, to the US, to the UK, to Germany, to even South Africa.
But they don't know their own country.
They don't know Cameroon. Have you been to Mwanko? Have you been to London? Have you tried to visit the beautiful rocks around the Room cities? No. Have you just taken time out to drive out of your own community to visit another community not too far from you? People grow up and make their perceptions in a very closed space, unstated. That's the first thing we can do. Let's learn to discover one another. The second thing is that we need to promote tolerance and punish those who are preaching.
You're talking about tolerance. I want to believe that people who actually migrated from elsewhere and settled around Yaoundé, Douala, and these main cities are more tolerant than the people around it because they have not moved out of their comfort zone.
These are research statements or research problems I would want students of conflict and conflict management and conflict transformation to look into. Why? Because if you go into communities into the south, have you been to QC? It's in the number of people who are not indigenous, but who have come and have been accepted by the locals and say, look, have a piece of land, farm here, have a piece of land, build a business, have a piece of land, settle with your family, and never even go back. We are having two major conflicts in the country. One hitting us from the far north and one hitting us from the northwest and the southwest. Yes, we're now having to stabilize the eastern border. But people from these communities, you'll be shocked at where you would find them, who've bought lands. If you go beyond Yaoundé, there's a place just after Ntui called Jerusalem. I was like, oh, we have our own Jerusalem in Cameroon. And you see people who've been running from violence in the northwest and southwest, settled and farming in these communities. And I meet the community chief, and he's telling me they're Cameroonians.
The nomenclature Jerusalem given by the people or
given by the people. Like the locals are saying, look, this is some sort of new beginning for our communities, and then we are going. So there's in as much as we're seeing acceptance and tolerance, we are also seeing lots of resistance, and this resistance keep being echoed because I think also that part of what the media does is that it only sees society from a negative perspective. We're not having good practices being promoted.
Positive
part of it. Intercultural marriages, businesses that have been set by non-Indigenous and even non-Cameroonians are not even being portrayed online, like on the media. We don't see national days of interculturality and multiculturalism, in which people say, look, I'm Muslim, you're Christian. How many of us know the famous church, which is around the Brikitiri neighborhood in Yaoundé, close to the mosque, where people accept each other? And when services are going on here, those who are Muslim know that, no, we need to respect these people in their diversity. And when we have prayers on Friday, the church knows that, no, we will not set programs this way because we are doing this. These are things that the media need to push further so we curb hate speech.
Yes, what psychological and social impact does sustained exposure to hate speech have on targeted communities?
Reduces self-esteem. The moment you're constantly being told, oh no, Langlola, you're being told, oh, Lubamili Kela, you're constantly being told, nada Bali person. No, that one na Bakwere. And then the chop report. It makes you feel like you are nothing.
It makes you to be resistant too.
It makes you to be resistant to change and to open your arms to love one another based on who they are. That is one of the things it does to you. Secondly, is that it puts some sort of bitterness in you, in which everywhere you see even the good aspects of other cultures, you tend to say, because I had this experience with this person, I'm not going to accept it. Thirdly, it pushes beyond just what you think to what you tend to believe. You look at life from a negative perspective. I see Boney and I start thinking of what one of Boney's brothers or sister did to me. And you would see, have you heard the term that people from community A are all prostitutes? people from this community are witches and wizards. I have the opportunity of traveling around this country. And the young man asked me in Douala. In fact, he told me, he was not even asking me. Je sais que les Yabasiens sont des sorciers. To me, I know that people from Yabasi are all witches and wizards. And I asked them, how did you know? They say, I grew up knowing that. So there is nothing you're going to tell me to change my mindset. And these are sweeping statements people make because of there's been a sustained exposure to hate speech and hateful content within their community.
Yes, what legal frameworks exist in our country to regulate hate speech, especially during elections? Are they adequate? I mean, just let's know.
Legally in Cameroon, we have two laws that, I would say three, basically, that legal frameworks that we would talk about hate speech. The first one is the Penal Code in Article 241. As it's very clear, it talks about contempt to tribe. And it goes beyond to say contempt to tribe. Whoever who treats another person differently based on backgrounds such as tribe, ethnic, religion, and the rest will actually be caused to pay a fine and or go to jail. And it gives additional sanction to people who are opinion leaders. If you're a youth leader, you're a politician, you will actually be called upon. You're a teacher, you will be called upon to be given double this sanction. And there are no circumstances that they will say, look, you did this by mistake. So if you are by mistake, the law does not forgive you. But we have also the 2010 Cyber Criminal Law, which says that any communication by electronic voices that tend to denigrate somebody, tend to attack somebody, should be punished by law. Definitely, we have the Electoral Code that talks about not only falseful information, but information that does not coincide to build peace and social cohesion during times of election. If we take these three laws, we will say these are very good laws, but no implementation. Where have we implemented one of them? We are calling on cases of top politicians. We're calling on cases of top academicians. In fact, do you know that the term Tongtina Sardina was crafted and designed and explained to the people by a professor on a TV debate? He is walking the streets and has been appointed severally after this. And what are we saying? That no, we are telling the civil society to go fight hate speech. While government looks at that, I look at them in the face and say, the authorities, we need to be serious to ourselves. I am a young person growing, and I'm looking at what I will leave for my younger generation. But you out there with power, holding power, not only in high places, but even in social places. Remember that we have most of our administrators in churches. Most of them are traditional rulers. Most of them also have PhDs, and they're sitting there. What kind of society do you want to live for us? If the state councils can do this, we had a case where a certain young man in a taxi said, in Yaoundé, Bamileke women and Anglophones should leave because they're very dirty in taxis and they're smelling. This is a statement made on tape, and he films himself and put it online.
And that must be that.
And I'm asking myself, what is the role of the state council? I love the way it's been called in French, le ministère public. His interest is to do what? Protect the interests of the public. No one has to do that. But do you know what the law says? Someone has to complain.
Let's have a commercial break. But please continue to like, share, support our platform. Stay tuned.
SJ Oceanic View Guest Lodge. We currently have modern apartments and studios available for your comfort. We are located in Limbe, Isokolo New Road, just behind Marriott Inn Hotel. Our prices ranges from 40,000 francs studio and 60,000 francs apartments per night, and long stays are negotiable. We have air-conditioned rooms and parlors with internet service, parking space, and security. For more information and reservation, please contact 676 97 46 43. SJ Oceanic View Guest Lodge.
Welcome back. Dr. Ngala, I suppose your services are being requested by bodies like ELECAM, MINAD, political parties, the Constitutional Council, and the civil society, at this particular moment. So how can these bodies actually coordinate to monitor and respond to hate speech during campaigns?
There is an outcry for synergy of action.
That synergy is very important.
In Cameroon. And generally, the problem we have with synergies around Cameroon is that most, if not all, of the structures want to work in silos. You would have the National Communications Council doing its own job. You would have the Ministry of Communication with the Division of Media Observatory doing its own job. You have the National Commission for Promotion of Bilingualism doing its own job. And ELECAM doing its own job. And let me tell you, to be very frank with you, I am a member of the Multi-Stakeholder Consultative Board for ELECAM, which means that every time ELECAM calls a meeting, we bring up these questions of hate speech with other stakeholders, be them from the media, civil society, government, and even the international body, to say this is what we are saying. And the first coordinated thing we would want to happen is that let us not have a top-bottom down approach towards elections and towards campaigning and curbing hate speech. Let's have a bottom-top approach. When I say bottom-top approach, one of the reasons is this. The moment in which you move into a room and you're giving a piece of paper with a list of things not to do, to sign, you feel like this is a decree. Mm-hmm. And human behavioral change does not work well with decrees. It works well with dogmas. It works well with internalization and beliefs by local persons. So the first thing we need to do is code of conduct. Why don't we hold BOMA sessions to see all political parties sit and we say, look, Party A, you call my militants this, and we don't want it. We want you to stop. And Party B say, you call my militant this, we want it to stop. That's the first way we stop hate speech. And then we all take as a responsibility to denounce hate speech, whoever it's coming from. Let me give you a very simple example. When I can call political party names. When the PCRN militant call the CMR militant names, we don't have the SDF going online to say we've seen hate speech online on another political party and we think this is wrong. When the SDF is also victim of this, we don't have the CPDM going online to say we've seen this. When the CPDM is victim, we don't have other political parties jumping into this. And this reduces the weight of things. That's the first thing. The second thing is that sympathizers, we have militants and sympathizers of every political party. People who are not, you don't even know them, but because you are who you are, they decide to. And when you're in the public space, you expect this. Sympathizers go and on your ticket say that we militants of this, we don't do this with these people.
How do we have that synergy that you're talking about so that there should be no mix up?
The first thing is that stakeholders need to come together. And we need an umbrella association, an umbrella organization. And the reason why we need an umbrella organization is because we cannot all be the conveners. We need someone to step ahead. And I'm calling on not only state, but also partners to Cameroon, international partners to Cameroon, but state institutions and also consortiums of the civil society to bring people together and say, look, this is a problem, how do we do it? We've seen the signing of codes of conduct. How did it was done as a problem? It worked perfectly well in countries like Liberia. It worked in countries like South Africa, in countries like Kenya, where people came together and said, this is what we will not do. The do's and the don'ts. We can do that. That's one of the things. We can name and shame, which means that if it's Boney, who is a propagator of hate speech, I come online and say, look, I go on TV and say, Boney has been victim of, or he's been actually caught up in propagating ABC. We are considering this.
That naming and shaming is a very important aspect because it has worked well in many countries.
Exactly. It's worked very well in many countries. And thirdly, we will not only say naming and shaming. People should be brought before the law to answer for it. But be very careful that in countries like ours, we've seen laws that are supposed to protect people actually being used to target and stifle opinions, most especially when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So using the law, again, for me, most of the times, is always a slippery ground. And that's why I always vote for assertive actions and go back to the law as a last.
Yes, you said a few minutes ago that when you move into a room and you are told you should do this, you should not do this, it makes you, take a step backward. So what are some of the risks and trade-offs associated with stricter regulations like censorship, chilling effects on free speech?
The first thing is censorship. You've said it. Imagine, Boney, that you are a journalist and you're told that using a particular word would mean that you are attacking a particular community just because the law says so. The law is a slippery ground in which can be used depending on who is interpreting it. In that. So it can limit the way media reports information to us. That's the first thing. The second thing we have as this is we can use laws not only to censor, but to stifle opinions and push out particular narratives. We've seen the 2010 cyber criminal law. We've had a couple of journalists who've been tried on this. We are asking, why don't we have the same when it comes to when this propagation is coming from people, at times very close to government, at times high persons in the civil society, at times big political figures, but also at times big businessmen or even international partners to Cameroon who stand up and say things, and the law is silent and quiet on these things. The risk with this is, in as much as we want to advocate for more transparency, for more laws, stricter and tighter conditions, we need to also understand that the interpretation of the law poses a problem most of the times, if not some of the times.
Should there be a special election period, standards or protocols for hate speech? For example, let's say sanctions.
I think sanctions should be universal in general. But in times of elections, we should watch them more. The reason is very simple. Political periods, political scenarios are highly polarized times, in which you might just say, I am from, I am from Kumbu, and people can decode that to mean different things, which means that within times of elections, we need to just reactivate our monitoring cells to pick up content that is being said by who, when, and why, and then push it directly to authorities and stakeholders.
So what are the effective strategies, either technological, educational, to preempt hate speech during election periods?
First, we need the multi-stakeholder approach to be much more robust. I give you a very simple approach. If we can talk to companies or tech giants like Facebook, like TikTok, Facebook or Meta, which owns now Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. If we can talk to TikTok, if we can talk to Google and say, look, these are the kinds of realities in the ground we will do. This is from the tech side. But secondly, internet providers.
Yeah.
We want to know from the regulatory agencies, who are you tracking? What are you seeing? Who can do what, when, and who is doing what? In fact, on real time. Thirdly, we want those who are to sanction. It makes no sense if ANTIC, like we call them in Cameroon, National Agency for Telecommunications Regulatory, it makes no sense if they publish a list of 25 persons saying that these are persons who've been propagating fake news, they've been doing defamation, and the courts and the police cannot hold these people to account. It makes no sense. In fact, this will just be like you're sending a letter to someone who will never receive it. It's been sent, you've done your own job. There needs to be consultation. And the last thing is the watchdog, the role of the civil society. Not only to sit and say we're seeing hate speech, release statement and direct them, propose solutions, which I think this could be something.
Yeah, but this other important point, how can social media platforms be held accountable?
It's a very difficult question. And let me look at this. I'm sure that we should be beaming live on a particular social media platform. And I would say this. Social media is built on a capitalist framework, which means it's out there to make money. The more likes, the more views, the more people see the virality of the content, makes it much more easier for you and me to make money from social media. And that's why social media at times is not very, very prompt to reacting to your comments and actions and complaints as far as content is concerned. The second thing is how many people on social media. In fact, if you look statistically, you realize that almost more than 5 to 6 million Cameroonians are on social media. In the last presidential elections, up to 5 to 6 million Cameroonians voted. Okay. When you look at the number of persons on the social media platform, Facebook alone has more than 3/4 of the world's population on its platforms. Statistically, let's go check. And Facebook is telling you that if a country like Cameroon blocks it from coming here, they're going to not have any problem. Because what?
Yeah, so
advertisements and the rest is not coming. Platforms will not act based on country, but they would act based on groupings. The only groupings that have succeeded has been the European Union. Countries like the US. I tell you, if in countries tough in Africa, like Nigeria, like South Africa, like Egypt, like Kenya, like Ethiopia, who are advanced to a certain level as far as technology. They've not been able to hold Facebook to account. Yes, in Kenya currently we have what we call the Facebook trials, where Facebook is being dragged to court there. But the policy change has not actively been effective because they are having policies in these countries which are not actually, the government are finding it difficult. So platforms as a country, I would always recommend that if Africa, the AU goes to Facebook as a block, we stand more chances to make money because of technology. You block Facebook in Cameroon now, you know what will happen? People are going to download VPNs to use Facebook.
Okay, to what extent should political candidates and parties themselves be responsible for controlling hate speech? We heard Minister Chiroma of the FNC recently in Bamenda saying that a secessionist leader, Chris Anu, is his friend and he was asking for his protection. We cannot say per se that's a hate speech, but honestly, for a political leader vying for that high office, saying somebody who wants Cameroon to be disintegrated is his friend and is asking for his protection, that person needs to be called to book.
Okay, I don't want to jump into political gimmicks and campaign slogans because these are periods of high polarization. But one of the things we know from a peace building perspective is that it's better to dialogue than to have closed doors. It's better to build bridges. It's better to be in contact with those you're fighting and talking to talk than to sit and say we won't actually talk. As Cameroonian, we've promoted principles for no violence, not even only in times of elections. But this is what political parties can do. The first thing is, when you sit and your militants in France, who are in Germany, in Belgium, in the US, and South Africa, wherever they are, make hateful statements against another political candidate, and you sit quiet because it's bringing you more followership. It's evil. This is bad. So political parties need to stand up to that. That's the first thing they can do. The second thing is that they don't need to wait for hate speech to happen before they do that. One of the rules of political parties is not only to fight to conquer power, at least this is basic political science, it's also to do what political socialization. And part of the political socialization is education on political tolerance, in which if I tell you that your principles are not good, you're going to attack what I'm saying based on the ideologies I'm giving you, not necessarily based on the kind of person I am. So political parties have a role in that they have to actually orientate and educate their militants on what to be said and what not to be said, most especially when it disintegrates the nation. And the last one will be, we all are people. There's no uniform country in the world. And when there's no uniform country, hate speech is bound to exist.
Yes, so what can fact-checking, counter-narratives do to weaken or neutralize hate speech?
Fact-checking first. Lots of hate speech is just misinformation people have. And I can give you examples of this. When we say that, if you go to a town like Bamenda and you say Koloyamo, no, let's use terminologies that the people watching us will know.
Yes, will relate.
Will relate with this. You say Koloyamo, you say people who are thieves and this. You tend to understand that those were perceptions that existed within a particular period of time. Growing up as kids, we knew that there was a tribe in Cameroon, in English-speaking Cameroon, which were considered to be, quote-unquote, the mother of prostitutes in the whole of the regions. But you know what? Research has proven that it's generalizations that led to these things. If information is not verified, we tend to fall into the trap of saying these persons are this. That is the role that fact-checking does. It gives fact-based information. Okay, when someone gets up and says les anglophones sont à gauche, can we prove that? Can we with facts go out there and demystify this? These are social terminologies that have been done, and with fact checkings, and not only fact checking, but also fast checking, because it does not matter if something is said today and you come and debunk it after with facts after 2 weeks. The virality has already gone. People internalize it.
What about counter narratives?
Counter narratives, we're coming to that. Use of hashtags, use of campaigns, use of sensitization, education, but also standing up and promoting what we call bystanders. Boney, have you been in a bus where someone is being attacked? A tribe, a group of persons are being attacked. And they say, c'est comme ça les Bamileke, c'est comme ça les Nordistes, c'est comme ça les Anglophones. And you, as a person, and I'm not Bamileke, but you'd feel like, okay, they're attacking Bamilikes, I should stay quiet. Do you stand up to this? The role of counter-narrative is this. Because it's not me, I should not say anything. And we have this famous say, seek where they catch coffee, coffee catch cacao. Do not sit and believe that because it's not me, it's not my tribe.
Maybe tomorrow it might be your turn.
It's not maybe. When it starts with one person, it's coming to you. It's not just hit you yet. We have hashtags. Before you click, in Pidgin, we have a very good hashtag, which is stop back more. Every time someone says something, just tell them stop back more. And
Dr. Ngala, based on your experience and expertise, what are the particular challenges that we face in Cameroon, neighboring countries, and the African continent as a whole with this hate speech?
The first thing is hate speech is increasingly growing, although we have redeployed mechanisms and strategies. And maybe the reasons are simple. There is high access to information. People are now suffering from infobesity instead of just suffering from obesity, which was a medical condition. We are having a psychological condition with the overconsumption of information, which is there. The second thing is we are having lots and lots of division because of not only ethnic, but we are having things which are now becoming much more political. Have you seen the fights between Cameroonians and Nigerians online? Have you seen the fight between Nigerians and South Africans? Have you seen the fight between Cameroonians and Ivorians? I want us to relate to things we see on a daily basis. Right. And these could start like jokes, but they're things that actually hurt persons and they touch the sensitivities of one another when they go into these places. So what I will tell you very clearly is that Africa is grappling with hate speech across its borders. There is no perfect example of a fully integrated African nation which will say there is no hate speech. In fact, some research even show that when we're talking about hate speech, we cannot completely eradicate it. We can reduce it to its barest minimum, to the point where even when I call my brother Boney, that hey Bushman, he's not going to take it in a negative perspective. Just like when two blacks in the US call themselves called nigger, they're like, okay. Two guys from Bamenda say, hey, Bamenda man, there's no problem. Man. There is no problem with this. This is what we should do. Get people to reduce the concept of hate speech to its barest minimum, that they can even interact with it without finding it hateful to themselves.
Yes. Are there historical patterns from previous elections here of hate speech that we can watch out for during election campaigns like what we are going through now in Cameroon?
Yes, but let's come back to Cameroon where we are here. L'ennemi dans la maison, Francis Nyamjo. He says he's an excellent scholar who actually demystifies this. He says what? That when we are talking about elections in this country, we should not forget that at one point in this country's life, people who were English speaking were considered to although be in the house, but to be the enemies within the house, because they had different political views. That is the first pattern we would see. Now, let's move out from this kind of pattern. We've also seen, also within that, the famous term, le Biafran. Considering some Cameroonians to be non-Cameroonians, Biafran coming from the Biafra, which is part and parcel, not part of Cameroon, but also part of another country, but not a particular ideology accepted by this country. Now, let's fast forward to the front and see what's been happening. Have you seen the poster that nous ne sommes pas des moutons?
Yes.
This tells you that there is a pattern in which people have been considered dormant, cannot ask for their rights. We don't know what they're doing, and we need to decide for them. Until people brought out counter narratives. Have you seen the other narratives which we've seen, even within political spheres, to say, les Bami Paul, considering people from or ethnic groups from the Bamileke land, to liken them to pigs, and we know what this could turn to be. Let's jump 2011, 2013, and jump up to 2018. We saw the famous Tontina Sardina, where some people were even actually tagged completely. In fact, there were persons in homes who could not talk to each other because you are from the opposing camp. I think that we need to watch these trends. Recently, we started seeing trends such as Iglesia that moved from the football space into the political space to say, look, if you are like this, then we are for supporting this, and if you are like that, then you're supporting that. These are some of the kinds of trends we should actually be very keen and look at when we have to talk about elections. The last one will be not only the diaspora. There was a time in our lives in which everything that dropped out of a plane was very good. In fact, we even said it moved down to everything that came down from a bus. Traveling to the village, my community would ask you to bring them bread. In fact, they just want bread. Until COVID dropped down from a plane. And we say, something else has dropped down from a plane. We have had the diaspora being diabolized. And I keep asking this rhetorical question. We say the diaspora is very bad. We have to take their money and build houses, take care of our medical bills, go to school and the rest, and they stay there. And they're only good to send us money down here. Hate speech is not only local here as a trend, but it also transcends the border to those who interact with us as a country within Cameroon.
Yes, but do you know that the crisis that we face in the Northwest and Southwest today is part and parcel being relayed by the diaspora that you're talking about? Because everything coming that way, it is like positive. They send money, remittances, and they do, but we just embrace it without asking questions. It's not supposed to be that way.
Conflict analyst, expert will tell you one thing, that when the conflict starts, it's very simple. But the way it goes, if your analysis are wrong, you get it wrong. When the conflict in the Northwest and Southwest started, I don't call it a crisis, and it's for a reason. It's a conflict now. It has morphed into a conflict.
Maybe you could call it troubles, like how the British called the problems in Northern Ireland.
Not in Ireland. Politically calling it troubles. And when the conflict started, our analysis were wrong. When I say our analysis, stakeholders who were trying to reverse the trends. One is that someone is paying a school fees. Someone has traveled out of this country, has seen good life, good roads, good educational system, good medical setup, a free society. And he comes back into his own community and he falls into a trap where he cannot enjoy what he's seeing elsewhere. Democracy should be universal but also localized. And these persons are starting to tell people, and that's why ghost towns and lockdowns triumphed in the Northwest in the beginning, in the Northwest and Southwest. Why? Each family had someone who is not in the country. And these persons are telling us, because I didn't find my way within the system, that's why I left. And as I left, I'm paying school fees and the rest. So what should we do? Okay, if you don't want me to pay your school fees because these are my principles, these are my views, no problem. You stay with your in your house, and then I will do this. We are saying that we should be tolerant. The diaspora has a role to contribute. Instead of attacking and going after them, we should embrace them and say, look, this is our country. It's motherland. Some of you picked up new nationalities, which means that Cameroon is not yet accepting double nationality. You don't have to participate politically, but socially you are participating. So how can we bring peace to our own nation without necessarily causing trouble? Because the trouble is...
So we need to engage with them.
But secondly, I want to be very clear on this, that it's not all the diaspora that is pushing a hateful and violent narrative within the Northwest and Southwest. In fact, we have people who are not based in this country who've been fighting day and night tirelessly to make sure that peace returns to these regions. They are not based in Cameroon. They are not even living in Cameroon, and some of them are not even. They don't even hold Cameroonian nationality again. So there is need for synergy to have everyone on the table for a frank dialogue.
Yes, do linguistic, cultural, or social differences, e.g., bilingualism, multiple languages, ethnic divisions, create unique vulnerabilities in Cameroon?
Very, very much so. And let me give you some few examples. When we move into an administrative service and at the reception, we hear two persons speaking your own language, mother tongue. I don't want to start from the others. I want to start from we before we go to the they.
Yes.
You feel some sort of relief, even if you address them in English and or French, which are the two official languages. You're very certain that if they tell you no, You feel like, okay, they speak my language, so my people are good, so it will be. But when you move in and hear people speak in another language, you're like, okay, I'm not sure I will be served the way I'm supposed to be served. I'm not sure the procedure will be explained to me the way it's supposed to be explained. That is just the first thing. The second one is we have grown up all with cliches. In fact, we've grown up singing songs, dancing to some of them, and some of these songs were all lies. Some of these songs were personal experience of one another. If we go to the Western Highlands, we have things that sweeping statements we used to make. In fact, I did a small study and I realized that many people used to say Francophones are very lazy and wicked people. In fact, I dropped off in Yaoundé and I realized that, okay, Yaoundé is actually gradually developing. These are French-speaking persons.
Well, that was a sweeping statement.
This is a sweeping statement that someone is making, and if you don't, you've never been culturally entangled with the people, you will never know. Right? If you go to the Mungo and you look at banana, yes, everyone else is working in the plantations. But if you go to the Mam and look at the number of tubers that come out from there, and cocoa that comes from there. If you go to center, south, and east, or center, south, east, and southwest, and look at the cocoa beans that come out from here, you will challenge some of these perceptions. Culturally, yes, we have a problem. Thirdly, remember that our cultural diversities is always a source of trouble for us. And the problems we have is because we have been unable to manage our diversities. To look at Boney and say, hey, he's my brother, and I am his brother, although we don't speak the same language, but we understand ourselves as a nation. And because this has been happening, we see people, Cameroon stands at the crossroad, not only with unique kind of perspectives, but also with very challenging perspectives in which you solve one problem, another one pops up. You solve the problem of governance, the problem of politics and development comes up. You solve the problem of redistribution of the cake. What do people call here? Giving a minister to each community. Another community say, oh, the Wimbu people are asking for a minister, and the South people are also asking for a minister. And before you know it, the Yamba people are asking for a minister, and you have the Funte asking for also a minister. And the moment in which this is not balanced, there's tend to be division and also frustration. And it puts Cameroon in a very unique.
Yes, Doctor, before we part ways, this very last and important question. What early warning signs should observers, media, or civil society watch for that might signal a rising wave of hate speech?
I think this is not just one, it's a battery of signals. The first one is when communities cease from referring to one another as Mr. Boney and Mr. Ngala, to referring to Mr. Boney as to be referring to, I don't know, that woman, Mr. Ngala, to do what? To push us to not to be seen through the lens of an individual, a human, but to be seen through our background. That's the first thing. So this is the first signal you see. The second signal is when hateful content comes to us as forms of jokes, as memes. When we look at it and laugh, this is the second one. The third one is not only when it comes to us as jokes, when we start calling each other names. And let me end with this. If I call you a dog constantly, I stop seeing you as an individual, as a human. I see you as a dog. So the treatment I give to you is the treatment I can give to a dog. So name calling should be a high signal for anyone watching trends around hate speech to say, hey, let's pause and look at what's happening. Because the moment in which I start calling Boney a name that denigrates or removes humanity from him, the next time you know it, I'll be looking at Boney not as a human being, but as something else. So civil society, government should watch out for this. And parents should at home be very careful with what they say. You have young children as young as 5 who make sweeping statements, who make comments you're even shocked about. Like I told you, I moved into a school and I hear children playing, and they're dancing and playing what we call tabala felo. They're from the Bamileke ethnic group or not. These are children as young as 6, 7, 8. They've listened to it from somewhere, they've heard it from generations. So this transmission makes sure that they grow up with hate speech. And when they are 15, 20 years of their lives, they've been told that money will kill people from the Bamileke ethnic group, and anyone who identifies as a Bamileke will definitely be targeted.
Dr. Ngala, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please subscribe, share, like, and spread it on our platform so that we should have more subscribers. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.